We looked at Job's argument on or explanation on God's justice. That's what we looked at last day. His understanding is that God's administration of justice is capriciously interpreted, right? You know, it is, he doesn't see a logic in God's justice. We looked at that, and the main accusation of Job can be summarized in 3 points. That is what we saw the other day. God has mistreated Job. God did not do well in treating Job. That was the first accusation, where he says Job accused God of oppressing him while smiling on the plans of the wicked. God smiles on the plans of the wicked prospers, whereas God is oppressing Job, which is a kind of, look at that, what kind of justice is, this God is not a just God at all. That is his interpretation. And second accusation was that God was not taking care of other suffering people. Suffering people are there. God doesn't take care. Now, this is not only believers, even maybe some atheists would say there is a God. God should care for the suffering people, right? So he has the same kind of logic here. And then finally, the biggest accusation is this: by accusing God in this manner, though done in ignorance, and by desiring consequently to enter into a litigation with God, Job was in effect passing judgment on God, therefore making himself to be equal. Right? That's a pride. He makes himself equal with God. That's a pride issue. So look at how, now, even though he was a good man, in his interaction with God, something is coming out which is absolutely evil, actually, to say and talk. So now let's look at what is God's reply. How does God reply to Job, not only Job, to everyone, about his own administration, right? Divine interpretation of God's administration of justice. Rather than responding to Job's demand for legal hearing, God appears in a storm. God appears in a storm. So God is not going to argue with Job. God doesn't see any reason. And he appears in a storm. Rather than discussing Job's innocence or how administers justice, God overwhelms Job with the questions about creation and management of the world. That's how he explains. He's not answering Job's issues. Rather, he's asking now questions. In both speeches, the Lord challenges Job's anthropocentric view of moral order of life. Look at that. What God is doing here. God is challenging his humanistic view of life. Anthropocentric view of moral order of life, and substantiates a theocentric perspective. So God presents his side, no doubt. And what God wants Job to know is that you need to look at from a God-centered viewpoint the life, not a man-centered. So let's look at each speech right? First of all, the first speech, the Lord's control of the universe is beyond anyone's comprehension, right? So this is, God tackles the issue. First of all, God addressed the issue of control of the universe. That is the first issue. God initiates this speech with accusation in chapter 38, verse 2. Right? 38. So if your Bible, can you please open with me to Job chapter 38. Verse 2. Can one of you please read? Anyone?
Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge?
All right. Here's the question, right? Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Right? Yes. If you are an authority to speak, on something, you should be knowledgeable person, right? You should have all kinds of experiences on that. Otherwise, don't speak authoritatively. That is the thing. So look at how God addresses the issue. He says, Job has darkened the Lord's counsel with words spoken in ignorance. What did he do? You painted a dark image of the counsel of the Lord. The Lord concludes this speech with same type of accusation in chapter 40, verse 2. So 2 chapters it begins from 38, 39, 2 chapters, then comes to chapter 40, verse 2. Look at 40, verse 2. 40, verse 2.
Will the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? Let him who accuses God answer.
Yeah. So it's actually that 38, 39 is just God is answering. And so in chapter 40, verse 2, we see that God questions Job concerning the validity of his desire to legally contend with him. God is questioning him, hey, what is authority you have, Job? What authority you have? God is reflecting with each accusation that Job does not comprehend his plan and work, right? So all what God is doing, Job, you don't understand how this universe runs. In demonstrating his accusation about Job's lack of wisdom, right? Job lacks wisdom. God raises a series of rhetorical questions, right? Many, many questions. This can be broken down in threefold manner. And if you wanted to look into that, all right, how God arranges the questions. Chapter 38, verse 4 to 11. God he's asking him about his creation, God's creation of the world. That is what being asked, right? The questions are centered around God's creation. Then verse 12 to 38, questions are centered around his sustenance of the world, right? How God sustains the world. God is asking the question to Job, Job, do you know how do I sustain this world? Then verses 39, and it goes on to chapter 39 to 30, God asks the question about his management of the animal kingdom, most of which are undomesticated. Yes, there you see how God managed the animal kingdom and asking the question, Job, do you know about this? So, what is God trying to do here? The point of this is to demonstrate that Job is unable to comprehend what God is doing because Job is not an equal to God. Job is not God's equal. There is no equal for God. He's unique. God in his freedom as an all-wise, all-powerful, sovereign, had created, and he is sustaining his creation. Okay? God created, and he sustains it. This is God-centered world in contrast to man-centered world, and a life view advocated by Job in his ignorance as well as his fellow wise men. So all the friends and Job had a man-centered view of the world and life. You see, that was the problem. Man-centered view of life. And what God is now teaching Job, no, Job, you look at from my viewpoint. My viewpoint. I have created, I sustain, I control everything. Even the animal realm, animal world, which you don't know anything about, I sustain them. All right? So the first barrage of questions are centered around God's control of the universe. Right? And God wants to teach Job and us as well that we don't know a thing about the universe, how God controls. We don't know a thing about, right? Which is important because Job's accusations were very high and God is answering. Second answer centers around God's administration of justice, right? The first one, the Lord's control of the universe, is God says it's beyond anyone's comprehension. Second, God's administration of justice also is beyond anyone's comprehension. It's not as we think. And it goes on from chapter 40 to chapter verses 7 on, and it goes on to chapter 41. Like the first speech, God makes another accusation in 40 verse 8 against Job. Let's look at chapter 40 verse 8 here. Job, book of Job, chapter 40 verse 8. Can one of you please read?
Would you discredit my justice? Would you condemn me? Justify yourself to justify yourself.
Yeah. So you know that what was the problem of Job? It is he's questioning God's justice. Now look at in the verse 8, he says, would you discredit my justice? All your argument says, I am not a just God. Not a just God. Would you discredit my justice? Would you condemn me to justify yourself? Are you going to say that I am wrong to claim that you are right? Job, is that you're doing? With this accusation, Job is accused of having discredited the Lord's justice, Yahweh's justice, condemning God to justify himself. Wow. God is really taking so serious here. Really serious. He says, are you justifying yourself to condemn me? Because any and every time when we try to justify ourselves, that's what happens, right? In front of God. As such, the Lord's last speech does relate to his administration of justice, but not it is not in the manner that either Job or his friends had expected. Yeah, God is talking about his justice, but it's not what they expected. After this accusation, the Lord challenges Job in chapter 40, verse 9 to 14. Right? The Lord challenges Job in chapter 40, verse 9 to 14. And to take over God's place. He says, you come to my place and execute retributive justice on the wicked. Now he's asking, okay, you are saying I am wrong, right, Job? Why don't you come to my place and you punish the wicked? You punish it. God then returns to continue questioning Job in reference to his control of the animal kingdom. His questions focus on two of the wildest animals of Job's day, Behemoth and Leviathan. Those are the bigger ones. Who could be, we don't know exactly. There can be many. And there are times, it could be, is this Behemoth and Leviathan a reference to some kind of dinosaurs? Could be. We don't know. God uses both creatures analogously to demonstrate to Job that his administrative justice is beyond Job's comprehension. God wants to teach Job, you don't know a thing. You don't understand. You can never understand how I do administer justice. How I administer justice in this fallen world. You don't understand. Now the Lord, right? Okay. I don't think it may be a elephant or hippopotamus. I don't think in that way. Maybe that may be a wrong connotation. All right. The Lord challenges Job to look at Behemoth. All right. Let's look at Behemoth. All right. Maybe a few verses. Job 40, verse 15. Can you
look at Behemoth,
go ahead?
Which made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox? What strength it has in its loins, what power in the muscles of its belly.
Yeah, all right, that's enough. Maybe that's the reason I have, maybe that's a wrong wording there. It's not crocodile. This is, it says that this is a behemoth that I have made, which feeds on grass like an ox. Feeds on grass like an ox. But its strength is in his loins, stomach, which a power in the muscles of his belly. So this is a huge animal creature. Could it be an elephant? We don't know. Could it be a dinosaur? Could be, yes, because this is written very early. So behemoth could be land animal which is so big that it could be a dinosaurs, right? Could be a dinosaur.
Its tail sways like a cedar, no?
Yeah.
And the muscles of the thighs are close knit. So all this cannot be hippo.
Cannot be crocodile. Cannot be. Okay, so there was question asked, well, could it be an elephant, right?
No.
But not. Yeah. Not like this is much more bigger. That's the reason maybe I am now leaning toward dinosaurs, right? Yes, a reference to dinosaurs, because dinosaurs are mainly grass eaters, plant eaters.
Yes, plant eaters.
Yeah, plant eaters. So it could be. Anyway, so God is challenging Job and say, Job, now God is answering about his justice and talking to him. Do you know how do I control these huge animals? Huge animal, right? So the point is that Job himself could readily control behemoth. He cannot. God reminds Job in the middle of the speech that he has Behemoth completely under his control. God concludes this speech with a challenge in verse 24, reminding Job of his inability to subdue Behemoth. All right, and when we compare 24, now God is stressing that Job was unable to capture Behemoth. All right, he's not able to capture. God has completely it under his control. So many times God says, Behemoth is under my control. You don't know, right? You don't know. We should compare these two verses with with the verses 8 to 14. If Job cannot govern Behemoth, how he could hope to humiliate all the proud ones of this earth? Right? He says, there are a lot of people who are proud, right? So he says, if you cannot control a Behemoth, how can you control all the wicked people on this earth? If he cannot do either, how can he question God's administration of justice? If you are not able to control an animal, how can you question God's administration of justice? Thus, Job should forget his request, vindication, and completely submit to the Lord's hand. Now, another animal is here is Leviathan. Now, don't take into account, if I put there some maybe crocodile, it's not necessary. Let's look at maybe a couple of verses in Job 41. All right, 41 verse 1. All right.
Can you pull it, Leviathan, with a fish hook, or the down
Tie
of
down
its
his tongue,
tongue with a rope?
Yeah. So suggestion would be, some scholars would suggest that it could be some kind, maybe a crocodile. You see, that is some suggestion. Could be crocodile, or could it be a whale? Maybe I can add some more suggestion, right? This is as you go and say this is a big animal that is living in the sea animal. If Behemoth is kind of a land animal, Leviathan is a kind of sea animal. So basically, maybe God is taking one of the big animals from the land and one of the big creature from the sea. God reminds Job in verse 10 that he was not fierce enough to arouse Leviathan, and therefore how could he hope to come before God with his claim? And this is developed further in verse 11, where God highlights that he owns everything. He owns everything. Because of this, God does not have to respond to any created being's claim. Let's look at chapter 41, 33.
Nothing on earth has its equal, a creature without fear.
And 34.
It looks down on all that are haughty. It is king over all that are proud.
Yes. All right. So what you read there, nothing on earth is his equal. There is none like God, a creature without fear. He looks down on all that are haughty. He is the king over all that are proud. All right. So what do you read here in verse 33, 34? God brings this speech to a conclusion. Using personification, God describes Leviathan as a unique creature. Such Leviathan had no equal on the earth. Yeah, there is no equal. Leviathan is very big. Being fearless, no creature would intimidate Leviathan. No one. God further describes Leviathan in verse 34 as looking down on all other creatures. As such, he is the king over all the haughty, including Job. Since Job could not approach him with a bridle, Okay, a fortiori argument, that is, if you cannot control a Leviathan, if you cannot control a behemoth, are you coming to control and teach me lessons? That is the argument, right? Okay, argument is this: if Leviathan, the biggest animal, is king over all the proud, including Job, much more so is the Creator, sovereign Lord of the universe. So you need to understand how much big the Lord. Maybe God is trying to show him, look at how big is his creation, and therefore you learn how big your God is. How big your God is. So the argument is, Job can neither capture nor control behemoth or Leviathan. Then how could he hope to take God's place in administering justice? God challenges Job. God challenges Job. Hey, why don't you come and administer justice to the wicked? You cannot, Job, because you are very small. You are very tiny. Someone like an ant, someone like, comparing an ant, asking questions to a man who looks to be so huge in the eyes of an ant, and telling the man, hey, you are completely wrong, right? Completely wrong. That is the picture God portrays in the book of Job. Job, you don't know all the ins and out of the history. Therefore, how can you say, I am wrong in administering justice? God never tells Job how he exercised justice. That is the interesting thing. God never told Job how he exercised justice. This was impossible, since God's control of the moral order of this life was beyond Job's creaturely comprehension. Yes, atheists can come and question. Any kinds of pruny creatures can question. God is not obliged to answer them, because none will understand. A man who has a breath for 100 years will never understand about an eternal God fully. A man who has a breath for 100 years will never understand fully the eternal God. That is the biggest lesson that God was teaching him. The Lord's administration of justice is beyond any creature being's understanding. It's beyond, because God is not looking at someone in India or in maybe someone who is in Palestine. God looks at millions and billions of people at the same time, and he has a plan, and all the plans that he has concerning every human beings are intertwined to that grand one single plan for the universe. It is intertwined. God's plan concerning Job is connected to God's plan about others' life as well. It's not one, right? It is so huge. Though Job does not have the issue of justice explained, now he learns that this is too profound for him. Now, when God asked him the simple questions, Job learned, yes, this is too deep. He must submit to the sovereign God who administers justice in perfect conformity with his nature and plan. Because even if God writes 10 Bibles, Job will never understand why God does what he does. He will never understand. Therefore, there is no point in answering. It's like a baby asking. Baby is asking a question like a 1-year-old asking a question about an atomic bomb. How does this function? And maybe you are a scientist. You are being asked, a 1-year-old, and you know that 1-year-old, maybe with the actions or thinking, he's asking, what is this? A 1-year-old will never understand what is this, its significance, its impact, how it is made, what are the materials. Doesn't understand at all, because the understanding of a 1-year-old is so tiny comparing to a grown-up scientist. A scientist explaining about the atomic bomb to a 1-year-old will be a nonsense. Just like that, God is explaining about his administration of justice to Job. It's something God cannot do that. Job doesn't understand, because Job's wisdom is very little contained in that brain. A little. He's nothing before God. So how can God explain all the intricacies of the universe, how he plans everything, how he has planned everything, and as the world moves toward that determined plan done by God? No, Job doesn't understand. None of us understand. We don't understand. Even after the revelation that is given, we don't understand everything what God does in the universe. None. And if anyone claims to be, well, he's a pride man. But proud is in his heart. That's the reason. If he says, any scientist, well, then they may be able to explain a little here or little there, right? A little here, a little there, but they cannot weave it together all the dark secrets or deep secrets of this universe that God has put. A portion of that is revealed in the scripture. That's something that is understandable, which is understandable is given in the Bible. That we learn about who God is. We learn about how does he work, and some of the ways that he works is given so that we can have a relationship with him. That is the only reason, and so that God can reign over us. Right? So here is the summation of the message of Job. Because of God's incomprehensible wisdom, right? Or so we call him all wise God, incomprehensible wisdom, and incomparable power. Incomparable power. We call him omnipotent, right? Omnipotent. As reflected by his creating and sustaining the world and its inhabitants. He is its sovereign. There is only one sovereign. That is God, who freely administers justice correctly. Yes. He's the one does correctly. Because this is theocentric world. This is God's world. Yeah, it's not your world. It's not my world. We might say in my world, right? Maybe figuratively speaking. It's not your world. It's God's world. He is the king. He is the king. He's the creator. He's the sustainer. And you are also a creature. I am a creature. And because God made me, what should I do? I should fearfully submit to the Lord and his sovereign will. Right? Fearfully submit to the Lord and his sovereign will. All right. So that is the message of the book of Job. That is the message of the book. All right. Any question on what we have discussed on the message of Job? Maybe it may be
So,
different. Yes. Go ahead.
yeah, regarding to this job suffering, when we compare to a human context, there are sometimes that we go through like job situation, and in this situation, like you have been teaching us that in this word that submit to God's sovereignty, and yeah, submit to His God's sovereignty. So, how far, as a human being, how far can we, what to say, how far can we
Submit.
hold the situation?
Yes, I can say yes. Thank you for that question. How far we can, how far we can submit. Remember, I explained about my friend, a fellow pastor, and his wife. His wife was maybe somewhere around 36 years old, having 2 children, right? Yes, 2 children. 2 children, husband and wife, pastor, serving in a church, wife, 2 children. How far we should submit to God's sovereign will is the question. And the pastor and wife had one daughter and one son. A daughter, after 5 years old, I remember, 5 years old, the daughter had a headache and taken to the hospital, was so severe, and found that this 5-year-old had a tumor. 5-year-old had a tumor, I think, yeah. And it was very difficult, and they did surgery, they treated, years of treatment. My family went through a lot of struggles, right? It's really struggles, really suffering, because the own daughter, like, looks like she is losing everything. She's going to lose maybe her memory power partially. She may not be a person, like a normal individual when she grows up, if at all she survives, right? That's what happens. It's terrible tragedy, happening to that family who is serving the Lord, serving in a church. When the wife was 36 years old, suddenly she had some kind of stomach pain, was taken to the hospital. And when she was taken into the hospital, she was found that she has, I think, colon cancer or some kind of cancer she has. That is spread in her stomach, and it is stage number 4. Stage number 4. Doctor said she might have maximum 6 months to live. Right? 6 months to live. I'm talking about something happened a couple of years ago. 6 months to live. And what happened? Here is a pastor who is maybe in the beginning of 40s, like he's maybe 40 or 40 or something like that. I don't know. He's caring for a daughter who had chemotherapy and radiation therapies and surgeries. And now he is caring for his wife who is going to die, the doctor said. And this wonderful lady wrote this way. Finally, she wrote to her husband. Right. Yeah. My desire was, when I was engaged, my desire was that I should live with you for many years until I become old. That was my desire. And I wanted to live with you until that I'm aged woman. I'm married life, having children, grandchildren, and dying. But now I know it is not God's will. I know that it's God's will is that I have to go early, right? I have to go early. She died within maybe within 5 months, right? Became like a skeleton, because she has to be fed through tubes and things like that. Husband took care, God's people took care, and she died. So you ask the question, how far you should submit? How far you should submit to God's sovereign will? Until you die. Until you die, you submit to God's sovereign will. Because, as always understand, God's people should always understand your life is very little, right? I say your 80 years of life, I'm just simply compare that with eternity. You are not actually made, you're not actually made to live for this sin-cursed world. You are not fit for this sin-cursed world. Absolutely, you're not. You're fit for eternity. That's what you're made of. Because your soul is eternal. You see? Your soul is eternal. You're made for eternity. You're not fit. That's the trouble we face. We are not fit for this sinful world. We are fit to live with God in eternity. So how far? Until you die, right? That's my answer. Question, Henry. Anything?
No, thank you, sir, for the answer. I was just going through this kind of suffering, challenges, because from the day that my father passed away, my elder brother started drinking, and till now, it's been more than 30 years. He's still drinking and then giving troubles to the families, not able to take rest. I am serving in ministry, and then I'm standing on the pulpit sharing God's word. At the same time, my brother is making trouble at home. So yeah, this makes me question. So I just wanted to ask the question. Thank you for the answer.
Yeah, and number two, your brother's drinking doesn't disqualify you from the ministry. He's a separate individual. He will give account to God for that. If you have a desire to do ministry, you should be doing ministry. If you're qualified, you should be doing ministry. That your brother's drinking or your father's drinking or somebody's life will not disqualify you in doing your ministry. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Sure.
you.
Pastor, one more question. In Micah, it says that we need to administer justice also. There's so much of things going on wherever in our places of work. So, and then with the poor. So in those places, are we not supposed to intervene? There is in Micah, it says.
Yes, I understand what Micah says. As far as Israel is concerned, Israel as a nation, right? Its rulers have the responsibilities, because rulers work as not only rulers, but they also administer justice. Not like a justice system that we have here. Rather, in older days, rulers were also justice, right? They were judges. They were judges. So they are supposed to administer justice because they are appointed in that place to serve people, right? So if you are a civil servant, you are selected to administer justice, make sure that you administer justice properly, right? According to the Constitution and according to what the Bible says. You administer justice, yes. If you are under that authority, like anyone who is on authority has to administer justice for sure. Anyone has to do that. That is absolutely right. God doesn't say you should not administer justice. Or here in the book of Job, it says, Job, you don't understand who am I really and how this universe works. It is not possible to explain to you because you don't understand. So that's what God says. That doesn't mean that we should not administer justice. I mean, yes, if you are on authority, like a father, if you're a father, like under your children, justice is needs to be served. If you are a policeman, if you are a judge, if you are a collector, district collector, or whatever maybe the servant that you are, you need to administer justice. Yeah.
I'm talking about some organizations that are made. Justice Mission takes up child labor, like that, and where kidnapping.
Yeah.
They try to rescue them and help them, because it also says show mercy. I mean, that is a character of a Christian, but there are organizations, and then sometimes they have to go and sit and have a silent march. I'm talking, is that all wrong?
Okay. Well, here is one thing. Any means of attacking any government or strikes are not encouraged at all in the Bible, right? That's not the way Christians behaved. Christians always seeks the face of the Lord when they are in trouble, when they see there is no justice prevalent, there is no justice taking place. So any kind of people talk about a revolution, any kind of armed struggles it's not encouraged by the Bible. No. Or any kinds of struggle for that matter.
No, a peaceful march, and then they go and give a letter to the president.
I mean, you can do a peaceful march if it is peaceful. There's nothing wrong. I'm saying any kind of struggles that people do here, striking against certain things, may not be encouraged by the Bible. I don't think the Bible encourages that kind of thing, because any show of power or any intimidation, any of these are worldly tactics to get your things done. And we know that these things will take place if God will, and our responsibility is to say, trust the Lord. Now, for example, I'm not saying that for some Christians are persecuted, everyone should keep silent. You can talk about it, you can raise the issues, and if there are people appointed to raise the issue, they can raise. No issue. You can go and talk to the president, you can talk to the prime minister, no issue at all. Those kinds of things can be done. But I'm saying, other than that, I hope any Christians would use any other means, because I know some people use the arms and ammunitions to get their desires fulfilled, which is not right.
All right, Pastor. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Any other question or questions? All right. Well,